Now, we're discussing globalization, identity, and social change today. But before we get started, let me remind you all of this comes under topic 1.3, and topic 1.3 is social change and identity. It has to do with it has to do with different components of identity. We have spoken about number one, we spoke about social class. Number two, we spoke about the extent to which your gender affects your identity. Number three, we spoke about how your ethnicity affects your identity. Number four, we spoke about how age could be used as a different or a separate parameter through which you could identify individuals, right? Now, all of that being there, there are a couple of more things that have to be kept in mind over here. Don't you think with the passage of time, as things are changing, the parameters that I just mentioned, like your social class, your ethnicity, your gender, and your age, they are blurring away. You know what blurring away means? They're blurring away, or in other words, their significance, the extent to which we used to consider them to be significant once. Today, with the passage of time, it's changing, right? Our social is social class of the same value as it once was. Let me give you a simple example. You've seen people wearing fake Louis Vuitton belts, carrying fake accessories from Chanel, from God knows what, and you've seen how those products they speak out, or rather they're screaming we fake, but they're still being used, right? So the question is, how? How is it that someone from a working class even knows that this is a product that is used by the elite? If I cannot afford the original, I might as well get hold of a copy. ठीक है? उसके बाद number two, we've spoken about gender. We know how gender as an identity today is not considered to be as, I mean, the strict bifurcation that we had about being a male or a female or men and women. Today, with the passage of time, we see it blurring away. There are things that were once expected from women and not men. You've seen how men do that, and the other way around. Number three, we've spoken about ethnicity. When we talk about these ethnic differences, the amount of hybridization or the amount of fusion in terms of things that were considered to be only for one ethnicity, or the clear-cut demarcations that we once used to have. It's all being used today in a more mixed manner, right? Remember the chicken Afghani tikka pizza example that we were talking about, or Pakistanis over here eating sushi. Do I have anyone who likes sushi? Sushi, anyone? No? Okay. Japanese food, Pakistanis eating Japanese food, pizza, it's Italian, right? So the point is, likewise, when you talk about distinctions or the differences on the basis of age, चीजें change होती जा रही हैं. Age की basis पे पहले there was content that was produced for families, and then there was content that was produced mainly for adults, but then again families. Today you have separate markets for children. YouTube is considered to be an app for adults. Today you have YouTube for children. So is the case with Netflix and a lot more, right? So these identities are social identities, the initial parameters that we spoke about, we know they're changing. The question is, to what extent do you think globalization is responsible for all of this? किस हद तक आपको लगता है कि globalization की वजह से ये सब कुछ हो रहा है? Right? Before we take this further, we need to know what globalization actually is. You know what? If I talk about globalization, what is it that comes in your mind? What is globalization? Influence of the Western world. Okay. What about the rest? Changes? Very good. Global changes, and how these global changes, how is it that changes that have been made or changes that occur thousands of miles from here end up affecting us? Nicely put. Who else? What is globalization? Acceptance towards other cultures. Okay, very good. Yes, who else? Typically when you're using the term globalization, you're actually referring to the way things are today, where physical borders that existed once, these physical borders, I mean, they still do exist, their significance is fading away, it's blurring away. Just look around, just look around. Majority of the things that you have around you have been produced in China. If you're studying business or econ, you'd have a better understanding of this. But I'm more interested towards the cultural aspects here, because we're studying all of this under the heading of sociology. The point is, let me give you an example that will make it easier for you. How do we get to know, us Pakistanis, us people, like they say, from a third world country, how do we know about sushi? How? It's because of internet. It's because of technological advancement. Physical borders today aren't as significant as they once were. We're talking in terms of exchange of ideas. We have more of exposure. We get to know more. When we get to know more, there are more chances of us being inclined towards experiencing it on our own. Has anyone tried sushi? You don't like it, I know, but have you tried it? Did you like it? It was okay. Yeah, what about you? Did you like it? No, you did not like it. You're probably as tasty as I am. No, I don't like sushi. Look at people from here. Look at these people. They're liking stuff that probably has got nothing to do with us. Likewise, do we have any K-drama fans over here? Okay, a very proud one. Do we have anyone? Do we have any K-drama fans? It is okay. They make do. Yeah, you really like them. Imagine a child who has origins from a country like ours, and the amount of excitement she showed the moment I said K-dramas. How is it that sitting over here, how is it that we know all of this? That's all because of globalization, is it not? It is because of globalization. There are so many things we hadn't even heard of. Today, as we see, not only do we know more, we're showing more of readiness towards experiencing new things. The amount of choice we have has led to a lot of diversity. Come on, write. The more you write, the better you keep on getting at it. Write. Whatever you think you could make use of later, write. The more choice we have, the more diversity we have, the more acceptance we have towards things that were once not heard of, not accepted either. Clear, dear? So, the question now is, has globalization affected us? Has globalization affected our identity? Is it because of globalization? You think it has? Amazing. Just because, I'll give you a simple example over here. The way women used to see themselves, or rather the way females used to see themselves 10 years back compared to the way they see themselves today. They see themselves today. Do you think it has changed? Right? Do you think internet has a role to play over there? You knowing about what is happening around across the globe, don't you think it affects the perception you hold about yourself? Don't you think it is eventually going to affect the way people see you? Or if I stick to the same example, not only today is it different if I talk in terms of how females see themselves, but there's a huge difference in terms of how the people around them see them too. Would you agree to this? We have 3G, we had 3G, 4G. I mean, that's the max we have for now. But then again, even rural, remote areas of Pakistan have access to internet today. I know for a fact there are many places that do not have access to internet. But nonetheless, quite a lot of places today do have access to internet, places that once did not. Is internet all about playing PUBG? Is it all about socializing? Don't you think at times in a direct manner or an indirect manner, in a subtle manner too, it ends up affecting your identity? It ends up affecting your self-identity. It ends up affecting your social identity. The way you see yourself. The way the people around you see you. The way you'd like being recognized. आप खुद को आइडेंटिफाई कैसे कराना चाहते हो? How you'd want others to see you. Is all of this making sense? Right. Come on, right. Don't sit idle. So, globalization, identity, and social change. This unit aims to briefly explore the relationship between globalization and social change, and in particular the effects of relationship on both your self-identity and your social identity today. Many of the issues, especially those relating to the debate about globalization, should be defined, and the sociological debate about the nature, extent, causes, and significance of social globalization. Now look at the beauty of this subject. 10 मिनट पहले तक आपने शायद इस चीज के बारे में सोचा ही नहीं था कि यार ऐसा भी हो सकता है. Like I said, this happens in many subtle forms too. Now we're not just sticking to globalization. इसकी nature किस तरीके से change हो रहा है, कैसा change आ रहा है, extent किस हद तक change आ रहा है. What is it that has caused that? What could possibly be the consequence of it? Its significance by and large. Do we get this? Yeah? Now, many of the issues, especially those relating to the debates about how globalization should be defined and the sociological debate about the nature, extent, cause, and significance of globalization are discussed in greater depth in Chapter 8. We also, of course, in A2s, we have a unit, we have a separate unit with the name globalization. So that's what we're talking about. We also briefly explore how social class, gender, ethnicity, and age identities may be increasingly shaped by globalization, and particularly through increased choices. The amount of choices that you have today, don't you think they've changed? Don't you think you have a lot more choices today? You know, something as simple as I have green tea in front of me, right? Now, while I was walking into this room, I requested the domestic staff to get me a cup of green tea, and the wonderful lady, she walks up to me asking, "Sir, ye theek hogi?" And then I couldn't see it from because she was at a distance. I walked to her, and this says ginger honey. Ginger honey. But this is something that is there, right there in front of me. Look at the amount of choices. You go to a store today, and you'd come across, what brand is this? This is Tapal, yeah. You'd come across 10 flavors from Tapal. Switch to another brand and you'd have probably 10 more. Right? Move further, go to the branded shelves and you'd come across 100 more. All we're talking about is green tea. Just imagine the amount of choices you have today. Did you have these choices 10 years back? No, you did not. The world today is shrinking. It's literally shrinking. Would you agree? See, K-dramas. Has anyone even been to Korea? Do you see yourself going to Korea in the next 10 years? No. Look at this. Get it? Things today are changing. People out in the West are trying out or showing interest towards our cuisine, right? I've seen Goras eating nihari in Chicago. Imagine. Yeah? Now, increased choice that supporters of globalization claim it has brought about. Finally, we could conclude by briefly investigating whether globalization has brought about the social construction of new forms of identity. Now, that's a new one. We had spoken about different parameters. I use the word parameters through which you could identify yourself. We had spoken about social class. We had spoken about ethnicity. We had spoken about gender. We had spoken about age. Yes, there's a lot of fusion. Yes, there's a lot of complexity to it, but is this even resulting in something new being developed? Is there something new coming? Is there something new on its way? Or is it already there? Parameters or factors that once were important, like I said, they're blurring away, and I'm sure everyone sitting over here would agree. But then again, are there any newer parameters that might develop? So new forms of identity which are hybrid or fusion of local and global influences. Local influences, global influences, right? Now taking it a step ahead, I mean, this is something that is so amazing. I would speak on this for hours, but because of time constraints, let's move on. We're talking about defining globalization. What exactly is globalization? Globalization can be defined as an ongoing process which involves the increasing interconnectedness. Look at how interconnected we are. Look at how interconnected we are. Especially, let's apply this. Let's apply, because you're studying about the society. You are a part of this society. Look at the way things have changed during this pandemic. Look at it. I keep on saying 28th February 2020, I didn't even know what Zoom was. To the point I used to spend 12 hours plus on Zoom every single day. Look at the way things have changed. Don't you think this interconnectedness would eventually affect the perception we hold about ourselves? Don't you think this would affect the perception the society holds about us and the society in general? It would, right? I heard that, but I'd want you to say that louder once so that everyone else gets to hear this too. And I'll repeat that for the mic. Does globalization affect religious beliefs? Yes, it does. Religion, we have this unit religion in A2, and it's so amazing. It's so amazing. Sitting over here, you'd get to know about what all is going on around the world, across the globe. We need to remind ourselves, okay, this is a bit off topic, but we need to remind ourselves the country we belong to, officially named as the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. You know, for us Muslims, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, Muslim by birth, Muslim by choice, both. I'm talking about myself. You know, our perception of religion is very different from the perception individuals hold globally. And it's not only us, South Asian countries, you could talk about India as well, right? For us, religious identity is one of the most important identities. If you ask someone, I mean, just give them an example and ask them one to use 5 words to define themselves or identify themselves, the first they say would be, I'm a Muslim. Right? There are many people who say, I'm a Muslim first and then a human being. And then I'm a Pakistani. Doesn't that, I mean, this is something we all come across very often. Don't you think this in itself shows the significance we give to religion? Right? Unfortunately, out in the West, there are many countries who do not consider religious identity as significant as we do. One, I mean, there's a lot that I could bring in over here. lot I could bring in over here, but religious identities are changing. If I give you a simple example, the significance that individuals used to give to religion, right? Don't you think that significance has changed? There are so many people whom you'd hear saying, let's not bring in religion over here. Let's not bring in religion over here. Don't you think, I mean, if there's something that they have heard the religion wants them to do, they personally, I don't know, I'm not saying it, you're saying it. Yeah. But at the same time, now let me ask you, do you think religious identity is changing? Could I? Could I repeat what I said before this? Okay. I don't exactly remember. I'm just having a conversation. I believe you were talking about religion. Yeah, there are people you come across who say, don't bring in religion over here. Why bring in religion? How everyone has their own perception about religion. Are you talking about the interpretation of religion? But there are many people who wouldn't even agree to is what is there. There are men, not everyone agrees to them. The whole point, yeah. See, the more of exposure you have, the more chances there are that things, at least in your head, would change. And that's a step towards things changing around you. Get it? Clear? So yeah, we were defining a globalization. Now, how is it that we define globalization over here? If we have a look at the content that we have in front of us on the screen, globalization can be defined as an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process because we're all experiencing it every day. It isn't something that has happened and stopped, right? Globalization can be defined as an ongoing process which involves the increasing interconnectedness and interdependency of the world's nations and the people into a single global economic, political, and cultural system. Now, there are three things. Number one, the term ongoing process. Number two, we spoke about interconnectedness and interdependency, right? Number three, how is it that the entire globe, see, globalization comes from the word globe, global. How is it that the entire world is being seen as a single global economic, political, and cultural system, right? Now, things that happen somewhere, thousands and thousands of miles away from Pakistan, it eventually ends up impacting us. It does, right? Something as simple as petrol price. Economically it is, right? Or Trump getting to be the president. Political change there impacts us. Cultural changes. For instance, remember when I had given you an example recently, the last month I believe, in Scotland they allowed children as young as 4 years to change their gender. A child as young as 4 years. Economically it impacts us, politically it impacts us, culturally it impacts us, it impacts our value system. And all of this again would impact our identity, our self and social identity both. According to Cochrane and Payne, the lives of ordinary people everywhere in the world seem increasingly to be shaped by events, decisions, and actions that take place far away from where they live and work. Right? We've spent almost 2 years fearing COVID. There was something that happened in China, started off in China. It ended up, as it looked like, it was unstoppable. It is We use the word pandemic to refer to all of this event, this entire catastrophic event. Deadly. It was unstoppable. Countries locked their borders, physical borders were closed. And for many countries, yes, they still are. Get it? Now, moving on, the impact of globalization on identity. Like I had initially said, our identities today are getting blurred away. Many sociologists argue that globalization has had a significant effect on local identities, which have traditionally been shaped by socioeconomic status, gender, ethnic, religion, and age. Okay, now our local identities, locally, how do we see ourselves? How do we differentiate amongst individuals around us? Do we differentiate on the basis of social class? Oh, yes, we do. Right? Everyone gets this, right? Yeah. Do we differentiate amongst individuals on the basis of gender? We do. Ethnicity? Yes, we do. Religion and age. Clear, dear? Right? So, us using the term local identity over here, let me just highlight this for you all, that using the term local identity, I hope everyone understands what local identity means here. For example, Giddens, remember Giddens? Anthony Giddens, the person who came up with the idea of structuration. Do not confuse this with structuralism. Remember when I said there are two major schools of thought, structuralism and interactionism, and right in between we had structuration, right? The individual who believes it's both. It's the structures of your society as well as social action that together shape things happening around us. So, for example, Giddens observes that globalization is often interpreted by some Islamic cultures as deliberate Western attempt to undermine traditional relationships between Islamic parents and children. According to Anthony Giddens, the way Giddens sees it, many Islamic parents, they have accused Western imperialism, right? Accusing Western imperialism, or in other words, blaming the Western society, the Western culture, to deliberately try to implant their own values, their own culture, their own beliefs in Muslim kids, right? So, interpreted by some Islamic cultures as a deliberate Western attempt to undermine traditional relationships between Islamic parents and children and to encourage liberal social norms which supposedly weaken Islamic traditions. I think us Pakistani students, I see a majority over here following Islam. We know what we're talking about. We exactly know what Giddens is talking about over here. Right? Relatable content? Agreed? Do we proceed? Supposedly weaken Islamic identity among the young. Western norms such as equal rights for women, free speech, and the promotion of democracy are regarded as threatening. Traditional authoritarian power bases such as rule by elites based on divine right and authoritarian power bases such as rule by elites based on divine right, and particularly the male dominance common in these societies. All of these have been traditionally accepted in many South Asian countries, in particular Muslim countries, right? Furthermore, globalization has exposed many traditional societies to the influence of Western consumerism and materialism, whose decadence or spiritual emptiness is seen by those who subscribe to a fundamental Muslim identity as a threat to their faith and identity, and especially the commitment of the next generation to the religious rules regarding religious lifestyle and identity. Wait a minute. I'd want everyone to give this a read once. I'd want to speak on this, but before that, I'd want everyone to read through this once. Now, this entire paragraph that I asked you all to read through, this, like I said, just like the previous paragraph, this is more relatable to us, right? We're talking about how people from, let's just say, countries like our South Asian countries or from the Middle East, how they are, because of globalization, been more exposed to the Western way of life, the American way of life. Remember, something as simple as credit cards, you're spending money before you're earning them. Remember, there's a reason why we call it a credit card, right? So, furthermore, globalization has exposed many traditional societies to the influence of Western consumerism and materialism, materialistic world, consumeristic culture. We can't just stop ourselves. We can't just hold ourselves back from buying things. Our purchase, we at times go beyond our purchasing capacity. We see stuff, we want to buy it, regardless of the extent to which we need it. The want wala factor is more than the need wala factor here, right? And whose decadence or spiritual emptiness, decadence, or in this context, the extent to which we have seen, okay, the extent to which we've seen how the Western world is more indulged into pleasure, leisure, partying, and a lot more. And at the same time, a lack of spirituality that the way we as Muslims or South Asians see that the Western people are experiencing, right? Spiritual emptiness is seen by those who subscribe to a fundamentalist Muslim identity. Now, what happens is, since we see that there's this huge void that is present in people from the West, right? Them, like we said, getting involved into consumerist culture, materialism, pleasure principles, leisure activities, and at the same time, spiritual emptiness. All of this at times makes you question yourself, question your identity. You know, there's something super simple. The more choice you have, the more chances there are that you'd be confused. The fewer amount of options you have available, the easier it gets for you to decide. And the more choices you have, the more chances there are that you'd be confused about what to opt for. Clear? Because of which, you know, this, I'll give you a simple example again. You know, something as simple as you going out to get yourself some clothes. There are a couple of options you have in front of you. You'd like a couple of them. You'd shortlist a few, and then you'd want to seek help from whoever's accompanying you. Could be your parent, could be your friends, could be your sibling, right? Because you want someone to be there to help you with your choice. Likewise, this utter state of confusion that has spread because of Western imperialism, because of the exposure that we now have, which we once did not. This has resulted in many individuals wanting to go back to the fundamentals of religion. Especially when you're talking about Islam over here, go back to a fundamentalist Muslim identity. Because when you talk about a fundamental Muslim identity, you have very clear guidelines about what to do and what not to do, what to stick to, what to refrain yourself from. Get it? Do we get this? So, Muslim identity as a threat to their faith and identity, and especially the commitment of the next generation to religious rules regarding religious lifestyle and identity. Right? If you consider yourself to be mature enough and smart enough to not give in to Western imperialism, you'd want to keep your next generation safe. You wouldn't want it to affect the newer generations. The focus on materialism, fashion, pop culture, and so on in Western culture seem to be corrupt, in that it distracts young people in traditional societies away from religion. In response, in 2014, Iran sentenced 6 teenagers to a year in prison and 91 lashes for dancing in public to the global pop hit Happy to Pharrell Williams. Now, this examples like these, you know, remember, like I keep on saying, you get marked on AO1, AO2, and AO3 principles, where, my dear, AO1 is knowledge and understanding, AO2 is interpretation and application, and AO3 is evaluation and analysis. This is your this is your application part. You're applying whatever you're studying. There are many kids who would walk up to you saying, सर मुझे ये एप्लीकेशन वाला पार्ट नहीं समझ में आ रहा, सर हम अप्लाई कैसे करेंगे? बेटा ये आपकी एप्लीकेशन है. This is something that is true. This is you actually putting the content that you've studied to real life purpose. You're using it, keeping in mind what's happening around you in the world, in the society that you're a part of. Application is as simple as this. कोई application कोई rocket science नहीं है. Clear here? So, Bauman, now this postmodernist, Zygmunt Bauman. Postmodernist Zygmunt Bauman also, I mean, I might as well write this down. Postmodernist. Zygmunt Bauman also saw globalization as having a profound effect upon local identities because he claimed that it has undermined the collectivist identity of many traditional societies. Now, undermining, let me highlight this again, undermining collectivist identities. Now, how is it that you undermine collectivist identities? Remember, okay, a simple example, right? A typical example. You know, television 10 years back used to be consumed by everyone together at home. Today, you wouldn't even, I mean, we had cricket matches going on last few days. And kids didn't really like the idea because they saw adults wanting to watch television. Unko chhod dein. Especially when you talk about younger kids. You have separate Netflix for kids. Uske beech mein bhi categories hain. Age discretion. This is content for kids who are 4 years and over. This is content for kids who are 7 years and over. Have you realized? Kids want to watch their show, which is different from the show their sibling likes, and the difference between the ages is probably 3 to 4 years. Collectively, जो हम करते थे वो सब कहाँ जा रहा है? Look at the amount of fragmentation over here. Look at the amount of divisions over here. Yeah? Now, globalization has increased the number of choices available to citizens and consequently promoted the identity of the individual at the expense of society, promoting the identity of an individual instead of a societal or a social identity. However, globalization has made us more aware of global risks to identity as well, thus promoting fear and uncertainty. This has resulted in the questioning of old certainties which have governed our lives for hundreds of years. In this situation, while some embrace the new freedom, I'd want to highlight this one as well. Some of them, they embrace this new freedom. However, others are attracted to more fundamentalist or typical forms of identities. Now, not everyone openly or happily embraces or shows acceptance towards these different options. I mean, look at the example that you were giving. Remember when we were discussing this the other day? You're like, oh, sir, what is happening? You were showing reluctance. Deep down inside, you were showing reluctance towards the changes that the society is experiencing. Get it? Now, moving on. Let's talk about hybrid identities. What are hybrid identities? When you talk about hybrid identities, the term hybrid, we all know what the term hybrid means, especially after we've had these vehicles such as Prius and what's the other one's name? Aqua. And there are a lot more, right? Hybrid. Why is it that we use the term hybrid for them? We use the term hybrid for them because it's a mixture of petrol and battery both. So likewise, when you talk about an Afghani, chicken, tikka, pizza, that's a mixture of you know what. Huh? Okay, so hybrid identities. It is important too that we understand that local identities interact with global identities. Oh yes, they do. Local identities do interact with the global ones, especially via social media, mass tourism, and cultural commodities such as HIM, television, sport, fast food, and pop music. Now, one more thing. That's film. That's not HIM, that's film. Yeah. Okay. Now, let me give you a quick little example. Turkey. You've seen how many people go to Turkey these days? The the rapid rise in terms of the tourism that they get from Pakistan has increased through media, through what exactly? I want you to name it. What was that very popular drama? Artagol. Now people want to go to Turkey, right? So uh, all of that has been possible through the media, traditional or otherwise. Taking it ahead, the fusing of global products with local cultures to produce unique hybrids is known as globalization. That's an amazing word, globalization. A combination of local with global. Get it? Come on, write it. I don't want you guys to sit idle. Write. The more you write, the better you keep on getting at it. Right? Globalization. What does? Hybrid identities. Our identities aren't as strict and absolute as they once were. We're showing acceptance, flexibility, fluidity. Do you understand this concept of fluidity? Look at this. This is fluid. I wouldn't flip this because you know it would come down. Fluid takes its shape. Right? Martel in 2010 claims that globalization has had two elements to it. Okay, so we're talking about two things, and whenever I come across two things, it reminds me for our paper 1, section A, you might as well get this in as a 4 marker, 6 marker, 8 marker, or even a 10 marker, right? So first, okay, so we're talking about, let me highlight all of this. We're talking about Martel in 2010 claims that globalization has had two elements to it. First, Western media and cultural producers are often adapt the producers so that they appeal to local markets and audiences. For example, MTV adapts its programming according to the cultural likes and dislikes of particular countries. Let me give you an example. The recent example that we've had for 7-Up, I mean, the recent one that I saw, they're having a lot of desi food, and along with that desi food, they're making it look like it's the ultimate combination. I mean, desi food wouldn't really be desi food without a 7-Up, a chill bottle of 7-Up. Likewise, if you still don't get this, I'm forgetting its name. I believe in India there's something known as, I mean, McDonald's has literally launched new things that are according to the local markets. I'm forgetting the names. Some tiki burger or some vegetarian thing, right? Why are they doing all of this? These global organizations, these global, I mean, it's a global brand, McDonald's. Look at how they're catering to the needs of the locals there. Why are they doing that? Because they want to sell. Because they want to sell better. I mean, you have this Subway here down. And go there, they'd have, you ask them about the flavors and they'd be like, oh, we have chicken tikka. I mean, what does Subway have to do with chicken tikka? Right? So, Western media and cultural producers often adapt their products so that they appeal to local markets and audiences. For example, MTV adapts its programming according to the cultural likes and dislikes of particular countries, such as Japan, India, Mexico, Spain, and France, and mixes Western music with that produced locally. Moreover, global markets such as McDonald's, Starbucks, and KFC often adapt their menus to reflect local tastes and to avoid offending local cultural traditions. That has to be kept in mind as well. Taking it ahead. Second, local cultures select and appropriate elements of westernized global culture that please them, which they modify and adapt to local cultures and needs. Of course, I mean, if you talk about authentic Chinese food, it doesn't even taste like the Chinese food, it doesn't even taste like the yummy Chinese food that we eat over here, right? We just pick and choose things that are in line with what are. Exactly. They're altering it according to our needs. And even after that, we very selectively choosing stuff that goes hand in hand in with what we want, right? So westernized global culture that please them, which they modify and adapt to local cultures and needs. In other words, they localize the global to produce a hybridized popular culture and identity. A good example of this is the Indian film industry known as Bollywood, which combines contemporary Western ideas about entertainment with traditional Hindu myth, history, and culture. Miller in 2011 argues that the Trinidadian from Trinidad argues that the Trinidadian use of Facebook is a good example of localization. He argues, this is a funny one here. He argues that Trinidadians use Facebook in ways that reflect their cultural priorities. He observes that locals refer to Facebook as Facebook or Macobook. These labels deliberately, now these are labels, they deliberately mirror the cultural inclinations of Trinidadian society, especially the characteristics to be fast refers to the uniquely Trinidadian way of trying to get to know another person rather too quickly, and Mako, which Miller claims is a unique Trinidadian cultural trait, meaning wanting to meddle in other people's business. Very rightfully put, if you ask me. Right? So what they're doing is they are labeling it in a particular manner so that, according to their own needs, right? So activity on Facebook in Trinidad is mainly geared to getting to know someone of the opposite sex. But once users become friends with another, they use Facebook to gossip about one another and to constantly pry into other people's lives. Facebook then is a good example of cultural hybridity. Clear, dear? Because it has appropriated the Western idea of a social network to project one's identity, but it has been adapted by Trinidadians for use as a source of gossip and as a mean of interfering in the private lives of others. Clear, dear? Does anyone have any question? Do we proceed? Yeah? However, another effect of globalization is cultural appropriation. This is a sociological concept. Remember, your marking schemes, or the generic marking scheme that I keep on referring to, your generic marking scheme has sociological concepts written in it, and sociological concepts does not necessarily mean you have to provide names with exact dates or theories. It could be something as simple as cultural appropriation, anything that you came across while doing sociology. If I put it in a simple manner, anything that you came across while doing sociology which you probably weren't really familiar with or had used earlier, in the most basic and simple manner. However, another effect of globalization is cultural appropriation. This is a sociological concept which views adoption or use of elements of one culture by members of a different culture as a largely negative phenomenon because it is a form of cultural theft. We know what we're talking about, from music to movies, how we pick up things from here and there. When the cultural element is used in the West, it is sometimes used in a disrespectful way or its cultural source is rarely acknowledged. A number of cultural artifacts which originated in other cultures have been appropriated by Westerners in order to construct their self-identity, including tattoos from Polynesian culture, man buns from Japan, body or facial piercing from India, and dreadlocks from Rastafarianism or Afro-Caribbeans. Clear, dear? Does anyone have any question? Anything at all? No? Right, we could discuss this further, but before that, let me just show you this topic over here, my dear, comes to an end. These are a few summary points which I'd want everyone to read through at home. These key terms, they are amazing to know. Using them in your answers, reading them helps you understand the concept better, the content better. Using them in your answers, of course, adds on value to your answers, which again increases the chances of you scoring better in your examination. Does anyone have any question? No question as yet? So if you do not have any question, let's call this a day. Take good care of yourself. Stay happy, healthy, safe and protected. Stay humble, spread positivity, spread smiles, and Allah Hafiz.